And when common sense takes over, you have this really interesting dynamic. And that interesting dynamic is this: people aren't as stupid as we tend to think they are in groups. So I think that if you were allowed to talk about anything you wanted, no matter how crazy or conspiratorial or ugly, what would happen is eventually people would either get involved, join up, become a part of it, and it would become a movement if there was something about it that was true, or B, it would just get run over. It would just be laughed off of the internet and laughed into non-existence. Now, I know that there are a lot of people out there who don't believe that. There are a lot of people who think. I just had a woman at the bank tell me this the other day. They pulled up my address for my business, and my old business address was my house, which is a very nice house in a very nice area, and it had been used for Airbnb in the past. And they said, "Oh, there was an Airbnb associated with this at one point. It's a scam. We won't bank wire the money." Now, it's only $100,000, but it's, a decent amount. And then the guy wanted to buy silver from me. So he said, "Look, man, I just retired from the Army. Very sharp guy. This is not my first go round. I've been watching Big and Corn Fed on TikTok for years now, like 4 years I've been watching this guy. I know he's legitimate, so I want to bank wire the money." And they said, "No, we won't do it." So I told him, "Look, send me a cashier's check for half of it." So he did. And then I sent him the silver. And then he went back to the bank and said, "Hey, I sent him money. He sent me silver. See, not a scam." And they said, "Yeah, well, we're still not going to bank wire the other part for you." So I got on the phone with him and I said, "Hey, listen, if you've got a customer who's done business with me before, who can vouch for the fact that he's known of me for 4 years and that I'm a legitimate company, why won't you bank wire this money?" And they said, "It's fraud protection." And I said, "But clearly you know now that I am not a fraud. I sent the silver." And they said, "Yeah, but we can't take any chances." And I said, you realize you're telling a man who was in the Army, in a very powerful position in the Army for something like 26 years, you're telling him that you won't let him do what he wants to do with his own money. And she said, "Well, sometimes when you're protecting the customers, you have to protect them from themselves." I'm sorry, what? You have to protect the customers from themselves? Ooh, man, does that sound like some dystopian shit right there? Tell me that's not 1984 in a nutshell. Look, pal, we're doing this for your own good, but I don't want to do it. Oh, that's okay. You don't need to want to. It's what's best for you. Okay. Why do you care? Because we do. That's all you need to know. That just doesn't pass the smell test with me for some reason. So, needless to say, I have to be very careful about what's said on here because these folks are extremely trigger happy. And they just sent me a notification and said, "Hey, you're on your last chance, right, buddy? This is it." And I went, okay, I better be very careful from this point forward. So I got a lot of opinions about a lot of things, some of which are fantastic, incredible, way, way beyond everybody else's understanding. Some are dumb. I mean, it's the R word. But uh, for the most part, when it comes to econ, I'm way ahead of the game. And the reason is I've been doing it for 35 years. I can add and subtract. I know what to add and subtract. And now that I know how the government lies to you and manipulates you constantly, because I've seen it over and over and over and over 35 years, now I can step in and go, okay, hold on, guys. This is what the government just said, but this is what they didn't say. Okay. And so, there's a lot to be said for what's not said. So, you can't expect the government to tell on themselves. If a guy gets pulled over for speeding and the cop walks up and says, "You know why I pulled you over today, sir?" And he says, I have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't kill anybody, and there's nobody in my trunk. Well, I don't know about you, but if I were that law enforcement officer, I would then take a couple steps back, probably put my hand on my piece and say, step out of the car slowly and let's take a look in your trunk. So, but that's typically not what the government does. They're very clever about this. They have thousands of people that are called wordsmiths. Now, is that a technical term? No, but it's probably the best way to describe what these people do. When you say, "Oh, I've got a professional speechwriter," what does that mean? Well, that means he's a wordsmith. Okay, so kind of like a blacksmith. Yeah, same exact thing. A blacksmith works with iron. They work with words, and they beat on them and push them and form them into something that makes sense and doesn't necessarily mean anything. Now, when people ask me, like, what do I have to listen for? Because this is key. I want to teach you folks this, okay? And by the way, this is part of neuro-linguistic programming. Okay, this is the dark side. You got the force, and then you've got both sides of the force. And I'm going to teach you a little bit about the dark side right now. So subscribe, share this with people. If you want your friends to understand how neuro-linguistic programming works for the bad guys, I'm about to tell you. Okay, I'm going to give you a little lesson here. The obvious stuff, the most obvious stuff is the stuff like the CPI, Consumer Price Index, which we, of course, call the CPI. It's a joke, but economists know the truth. And the truth is that they just take things out and put things in and manipulate things every which way. And it's like, okay, well, what's the Consumer Price Index? Well, it's a basket of goods that you have to buy continuously. And if that basket goes up in price, well, that's inflationary. And if it goes down in price, that's deflationary. That's great. So what's going on with the CPI, the Consumer Price Index? Let's take this index of all these goods that we use every day. Okay, well, what are those goods? Well, it should be basically everything, right? I mean, what do you have to do every day? Gas. I know that's on everybody's mind right now, but energy, obviously, like, heating oil if you live back east in the wintertime. Electricity if you live in Arizona in the summertime. So energy. You have to worry about feeding yourself, obviously. A huge one for a lot of people now is rent or your overhead for your house, your monthly payment. And so, let's not forget the cost of insurance, your car. Whew, man, this is getting heavy, right? Now, obviously, food and fuel are things that you go through every single day. It's not once a month like your rent. It's every single day, and you really notice those things. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you that this Consumer Price Index is everything you use on a regular basis. except food and fuel. Food and fuel, those are two of the things that have gone up the most. Steak's $25 a pound now. Eggs are still $5. So wait, what's going on? How does that how is that the CPI, the consumer price index? That's not the whole index. No, it's not the whole index. Well, why not? Because if we gave you the whole index, you knucklehead, you'd freak out. We can't have you freaking out. Have you ever seen what happens when a bunch of dumb cows freak out? So we don't want that. So let's take out the things that are the worst. Oh, you know what? We should probably take out rent. Okay, now what does this include? I mean, what's in here? Cost of electronics. What? The cost of electronics? The cost of electronics has always gone down. It always goes down. A calculator used to cost $200. Now you can get one for $10 and it does the same thing. It's like, okay, so the big question is, how do you manipulate people with your speech? I'm going to tell you the same thing. And I'm going to tell you in different ways. And I want you guys to, if you want, jump in the comments and let's talk about what I mean. I'm going to say the same sentence. Okay? I'm going to say the same sentence over and over. And I want you to tell me by inference, by intimating what it means, by inferring what it means, what you think I said. I didn't kill that man. Pretty obvious what that means, right? I think we all know when I say I didn't kill that man, it makes it sound almost like I didn't, but I might know who did. Okay. I didn't kill that man. Well, now wait a minute. So I didn't kill that man. That's the same sentence. But boy, does it mean something different now, huh? Because it sounds to me like somebody probably gotten a little dust up with him and may have, beaten him half to death, but didn't kill him. Well, we're just going over the wordsmithing stuff that you have to listen for very carefully when you hear the way that politicians talk, because they've had professional wordsmiths, people who change the meaning of certain sentences just by putting emphasis on different words. So, the difference between I didn't kill that man and I didn't kill that man, well, two completely different things. First one, I didn't kill him, but sounds like I might know who did. The second one, I didn't kill him, but I might have beaten him. I didn't kill that man. Well, no, I just changed it completely again. Because it sounds like I might have killed somebody, but not that one, not that guy. And of course, finally, I didn't kill that man. Oh, where's your wife? I haven't seen her around lately, Now, I just said the exact same sentence. And I just said it in different ways, but the same exact sentence over and over using the same words. But by simply putting an emphasis on different words, you can even do it with different syllables and it'll change the meaning of words. So my point is that when you are listening to these people talk on the television, you're watching these speeches online or whatever, listen carefully to not just the way they say things, but the words that they choose. Because if you think, why did he say it that way? I wonder why he said it that way. It's not a coincidence. It's not a mistake. it was done that way for a very, very specific reason. Now, your job is to figure out what is that reason, because something's going on. Now, the reason I bring this up is because we just had the whammy pulled on us again. We're going to have the best ballroom ever. It's going to be the best, the biggest ballroom, the most luxurious ballroom, the best ballroom there ever was. There's never been a ballroom. People for thousands of years have imagined, tried to imagine. They can't even imagine. It's so good. It's the goodest, bigliest ballroom. You can't describe it. You can't even describe how unbelievably marvelous this ballroom's. And here's the thing: it's not going to cost the taxpayers a dime. It's all done by rich donors. That's right. All of the same people who got me into office are the same people who are going to contribute $400 million to build this ballroom, and you won't have to pay a single dime. You know why? Because I'm not like the rest of these swamp creatures. Okay. All right. So how much is it going to cost? The ballroom? Well, it's going to cost $400 million, like we said. Okay. But didn't Congress shoot down a proposal where you ask for $400 million? Well, that's a different thing. See, that goes along with the ballroom. That's not the ballroom, though. But they said no because it didn't have anything to do with national security. So they shot it down. Well, yes, they did that. That was last week. But then by the end of the week, the craziest thing happened. This guy came in, an assassin, and he was gonna assassinate, you know who. And then because of that, it became a national security issue literally overnight. Isn't that weird? Like Congress said no because it's not national security, and then 2 days later it became national security. Coincidences are the neatest things ever. Like, it's the coolest thing ever. So now it's national security, and yes, we are going to need $400 million of taxpayer money. Okay, but you said your friends were going to pay for this. Yeah, oh, absolutely. They're gonna. It's every dime, every dime. The taxpayers aren't going to pay a single penny. But you're asking for between $300 and $400 million of taxpayer money. Oh, that. No, that's the basement. You got to have a basement. Everybody's got a basement. So we got to have, basement. And by the way, it's going to be nuclear proof. It's going to be national security stuff that only national security stuff that goes on under the ballroom. So yeah, we're going to need $400 million of stuff. It's more like a bunker. Yeah, it's just like a bomb room, right? It's just like the exact same one that's under the White House, 50 feet away. But this one's different because this one's bigger. It's cooler. I mean, and it's gold plated, clearly. So this is why when you look at what's going on, you got to really, really, really pay attention. Because when they said it was going to be paid for by donors, my first thought was, no, it's not. No, it's not. There's a catch. Where's the catch? Well, Now we know. Now we know what the catch is. Oh, $400 million just to build it. Yeah, but what do you want us to sit on the floor? You want us to sit on the floor? We're going to need a couple $100 million for plates. Yeah. So, bottom line is this: when you hear this thing about Nero as he fiddled while Rome burned, that's an allegory. He didn't actually sit there and use a violin while Rome was on fire around him. Basically, it's kind of like he fiddled around while Rome burned, just sort of watched. That's exactly what is going on now. Now, how is that happening? I don't know, because it seems like out of 330 million of us, since only 18,000 of us have actually made any money in the last, say, 26 years, gotten ahead at all. It seems to me that somebody at this point would have done something pretty radical, and yet not happening. It's absolutely not happening. Now, I will say that I'm familiar with the Constitution. It says that men will bear a terrible government. They'll suffer as long as the conditions are sufferable, and only once they become completely insufferable will they actually do something. Okay, well then, I say let him go. Let's let Trump do his thing, man. Let's and once Trump gets out, no to JD. Sorry, buddy. It looks like you might have been a good guy, but you knew Peter Thiel, and Peter Thiel is the cringiest human being that I know of right now. Larry Ellison's number two, but Peter Thiel is beyond cringy. Like, he really believes that humans should be under the control of AI, because he is very transhumanist. He couldn't even answer in an interview that I watched whether he wanted civilization as a whole worldwide to survive. Couldn't answer that question. It's too big a question for him. It's too much. Like, how am I supposed to answer a question like that? Because no, I don't. But I don't want to say I don't, because then I look like a complete insane supervillain, which, in my opinion, he is. He's a madman. Absolutely, no question about it. So the question then becomes, how did a madman get the keys to the castle? And the only thing I can think of is, it's our fault. We're not to the point where things are insufferable. Right now, they're sufferable, and we're suffering. And we're just going to keep suffering. We're going to keep our mouth shut until it explodes. So great, let's do that. Let's go for it. Now, if that's the case, and if it is all pre-planned, like John says, which is entirely possible now, it is entirely possible. If that's the case, then what I say is, let it go. Let it go. If this is the world that they want, there's only one thing that we can do, and that is figure out how to not just survive, but thrive under this new reality. Now, I can tell you one thing: buy silver. Now, I say this all the time. This is real money. When they go to a CBDC, which they already said they're going to now. Remember when Trump said absolutely no central bank digital currency? Remember when he said absolutely no new wars? Remember when he said absolutely no new income taxes? He's going to get rid of income taxes and replace it with tariffs. Remember when he said all those things that were not just exaggerations? It wasn't just a slight amount of hyperbole. They were flat out lies. They were lies. And now everything that we thought he stood against, he's for, including warrantless wiretapping by FISA. Well, Karen, not time yet. We can stand together, but nobody wants to fight back. And the reason they don't want to fight back is because the first probably 10% of the people who rebel will spend either years or the rest of their lives in prison. Now, will they become martyrs and heroes, and will we sing songs about them in 100 years? Absolutely. Is it possible that one or maybe several of them will survive their stint in jail or prison and then get out and become like Nelson Mandela, who was an arms dealer and an absolutely brutal leader, a brutal rebel leader? Everybody was terrified of that guy. But during the time that he was being treated like absolute dirt in prison, he became an angel. It was like he was the second coming of the Pope. Everybody loved him. He was this sweet, gentle old man. Okay, well, guess what? We can have one of those that goes from, brutal rebel willing to do whatever it takes to overthrow the government to kind statesman who, deserves to be let out of jail early and then goes on to take over the country. Yeah, we could have a story like that. The odds aren't nearly as good for us as it was for South Africa because it's a bunch of mixed people against a bunch of mixed people. There are no clear lines. It's not black and white, literally. It's okay, but there are some people from this religion that are good and some that are absolutely horrific. There are some from this religion that are good. There are some people that are this color that are good and some that are horrific. And because of that, it's so easy for the smart people to just keep us infighting with each other. And that's really the key. Let's keep putting out music that talks about sex and death, murder and abuse of women. Let's make sure that every young person in an inner city understands that being a father is being a punk, and that being a guy that ends other people's lives over the slightest act of disrespect is actually what makes you a real man. Let's put that message out there 24/7. That's all we need to do. And let them grow up singing these lyrics as they're falling asleep at night, over and over and over, and acting this out on the street until they get to a point where they're literally, their culture is a death cult. Okay, we got those guys. Now, not only have we destroyed that part of the society, not only have we destroyed those people for generations to come, but we've done something even better. Because you see this part of the culture over here that doesn't do all that. It's kind of old-fashioned, that sort of European old-fashioned group over here that still has kind of Victorian sensibilities. Well, these people will lose some of their young to this culture over here. But the rest of these people will absolutely be disgusted by this behavior, and they will learn to loathe these people, to hate them. And then now you've got two groups that absolutely can't stand each other. And by the way, let's tell this group that this group's the problem. Not that they're singing hymns without realizing it because it's cool music. They don't realize they're singing death hymns about ending other people's lives over a comment. What? That's crazy. Yeah, happens all the time. Yeah, it's funny. I said to my son as we're getting on the freeway, going over to his drum lessons, his music lessons, totally packed freeway, 3:30 in the afternoon. It's already traffic, no big deal. I'm on and off the freeway in 1 mile. I don't even care. But I feel bad for the people who are going to sit in it for 45 minutes. And I turned to my kid and I said, can you imagine if everybody just said, fuck it, and didn't go to work? Just said, nope, I'm not going to work today. how long would it take? And he goes, well, Dad, I think the country would collapse almost instantly. And I said, yeah, that's about right. And he goes, really? It would, huh? And I said, yeah, I think it would. And he goes, and then what? And I said, well, then we start over. Then we start over. But, at some point, we have to be prepared to do whatever is necessary. And anarchy can work, but it's a problem. And the reason I say it's a problem is because I'll give you a perfect example of anarchy. The Zapatista movement down in Mexico. It was a small group of indigenous people, all the same ethnicity, etc., who just said, look, we don't want the government. We're not going to rebel. We're not trying to overthrow the government. We just want you to stay out of our part of the jungle, basically. Leave us alone. Let us just do our own thing. We don't like your government. We don't agree with it. None of our culture fits your government. Like, we're all the same, and we've been just kicking it for thousands of years. We're good. And of course, Mexico said, no. If there's 10, 20, 30,000 of you, you're paying taxes. We're taking from you. We're going to take shit from you because that's what we do. That's what the government does. It steals as much as you'll allow. And that's the problem. And eventually they were overthrown, destroyed, etc. But, the problem with anarchy in a country like this is we already have enough people in our country that are not like us that it's impossible. And when I say not like us, does that mean that they're of a different color? No, not at all. If you've never met a black conservative, you haven't lived. It's kind of fun. There's a lot of them now too, by the way, tons. And if you haven't met a Republican Mexican, you probably haven't talked to any Mexicans in your life, because I'm gonna guess that at least half of them are super hardcore Republicans. Their attitude is, I came here, I worked my ass off, I made sure my kids worked their ass off and went through school, and now my kids are doctors, and that's because we worked our ass off. Nobody gave us anything. So if you expect me to give you money because you got your hand out, kiss my butt. That's literally the way it is. Well, now the Black Panthers are different. See, this is where I have a lot of problems, because I've studied so much. So when Barry Seal wrote To Die for the People, I read that book. I read Barry Seal's book. What white guy, what redneck named Big and Corn-Fed takes the time to read To Die for the People, written by a Black Panther, the founder of the Black Panthers? I did. So what did I think personally of the Black Panther Party? Initially, the group that started it, their origin story, why they were started, what they did and what they stood for, I was shocked. The Los Angeles Police Department had one of the worst possible records as far as police brutality. They were some of the most brutal people in the world. And when it came to coloreds, the way that they handled it was, they're probably guilty. If you got to shoot them, shoot them. If there's a question about whether or not they're going to give you any trouble, that spare pistol that you've got electrical tape all over, because electrical tape doesn't hold fingerprints, that spare 38, that little midnight special you got tucked in your sock, you just put that in their hand after you shoot them. What? But it was a traffic stop. Yeah, but he got mouthy with me. So what? I capped him. It's like, that never happened. Yes, actually it did. And things like that just kept happening. A 93-year-old man gets shot 30 something times while he's in his bathtub because the police raided the wrong apartment and scared the crap out of this poor old man. And then after they scared him, they shot him. All of them. Literally, can you imagine how many guys have to be in a hallway shooting at one single person to shoot a man 30 something times? So this kept going on and kept going on. And that's why the Black Panthers formed. Because Barry Seal and what's his name? Huey Newton. He was actually technically the founder, but Barry Seal was very close with him. And the bottom line is, they just read the ordinances for Los Angeles, what they could and couldn't do as American citizens, whether or not they were allowed to carry firearms in the city limit, which turns out they were. And so, okay, well, let's do that then. So a group of them, who, by the way, college students, decided that it was that they were just going to, carry some guns, walk down the street, not hidden. That would be illegal. But Huey Long, thank you. Wait, Huey Long. No, Huey Long. Huey P. Long. That's the shit. I was on that bridge. It almost collapsed after Katrina. I'll figure it out later. Anyway, Barry Seal's the one who I studied, and he said, we just wanted to be able to do what everybody else got to do, which is just walk around without being hassled. Now, of course, the first time they walked down the street with weapons over their shoulders, the police pulled over immediately and said, "Are those loaded?" And they said, "Yes." And they said, "Well, then you better get your ass on the ground and put those weapons down." And they said, "No, you better do that." And so basically the police, drew their weapons and said, "Hey, get on the ground, et cetera, et cetera." And they said, "No." And they drew their weapons. And so there was this standoff, an armed standoff in broad daylight in the middle of the street. And finally, the police supervisor, commander, whoever, came and said, "Hey, technically, they didn't break any laws by walking down the street with these weapons because they're in plain view." And the cops said, "Okay, but what about them, pointing their weapons at us?" And he said, "Well, did you point your weapons at them first?" And they said, "Well, yeah." And he said, "All right, get in your car. We're done here." And that was it. That was it. And that's when they realized, like, okay, this is the start of something good. Because, this was, keep in mind, this is in the 60s. This is a very different time than now. This is, what's that, 40, 50, 56 years ago, 57 years ago, half a century. And so we're talking about 2 generations ago and maybe 3 generations shortly. So very, very different. Very different. Exactly, the Second Amendment. But you have to understand, in the 50s, there were certain places in the country where if you were black, you knew you had a Second Amendment right. But there were also places around the country where you knew that if you were black, yeah, you got a Second Amendment right, but you better be real fucking careful how you exercise that right, because you might be out hunting someday and get mistaken for a deer. Get it? So be very, very careful. And don't you ever let a white person think you're threatening them with that weapon. So it was a very different time. So I get it. And what else did the Black Panthers do? They did a lot of shit that made the press and the people who were in charge very angry. but they also held neighborhood food drives. Can you imagine? Can you imagine these radical terrorists, and they're just out there helping poor people who are elderly, who or kids who don't have food. They're feeding them. Oh yeah, the Democrats back in Washington D.C. are promising all kinds of shit, but they're out there in the street doing it. After that, it was hard for me to call them terrorists. Now, were there different cells around the country? Yeah. And were some of them straight up domestic terrorists? You bet your ass they were. They were for sure. But yeah, the movie Robin Hood, in a lot of ways, in a lot of ways. But unfortunately, you can't allow something like that. You can't allow people to make you look foolish like that, because the next thing you know, I mean, what happens to Barry Seal when he gets elected to mayor of Los Angeles? Holy shit. Governor of California. Oh my God, not that. And that's the point, is it's like, okay, we're gonna let the black people into politics, but we're gonna pick them. They're gonna be our guys. It's like Willie Brown said. Willie Brown was one of the most influential politicians in San Francisco's history. And, his girlfriend, Kamala Harris, he said that she gave the best, starts with B and J, that he'd ever had. Okay, well, she said that he was her mentor and that they had a really good working relationship, and that he taught her everything she knew. And he said the other. Wow, that's not a Barry Seal type to me. No thanks. Right. So, what do you do? Bottom line is this: we're in a world of hurt right now. We can't save everybody, but we can save ourselves. Silver will probably be restricted. As far as the purchase of silver will be restricted. If you already own it, you'll be grandfathered in, because there's no reason to fight you on something like that. Collectible items will still be mostly non-taxable. And then the reason for that is rich people have collectibles. So rich people don't pay taxes. Rich people don't like being monitored. So they're above all that. And that's why if you're going to get collectibles, I would say be careful. I would not. I'll give you an example. If you said to me that you knew where there was a 1896 Carson City or New Orleans mint Morgan silver dollar in mint 66 condition, and that the guy was only asking $15,000 for it. Nope. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Buy it on the black market. With what? Well, that's the beautiful thing about collectibles. You can start with, I was talking the other night about penny collections. Look, I don't know if you could see. You see how all of these pennies, there are a bunch of them in there that literally look like they are right straight from the mint. And the reason is they've never been touched by anybody's hands. They've never been handled ever. These came directly out of the wrappers from the bank. All of them are at least 1958 or older. They're all wheat pennies. I'm going to pick one up very, very, very carefully by the edges. Where are my nerd glasses? Give me my nerd glasses. All right. I like this. That is a 1954 San Francisco mint penny. It is, as you can see, it's perfect. That's never been scratched. It's never been used. It's never, I mean, that is, that is mint state. Probably, if I had to guess, I'm going to say mint state 66 or 67. Now, what's that worth? I haven't even looked. I found out after looking at them. Used to have thousands of those. Yeah, well, I actually have over 1,000 of those. I have 1,700 of them in my collection. That's what I was talking about the other night. The fact that I've got to sell my collection. As much as I don't want to, I have to, because the most important thing right now. God, hold on. What the hell is this one? Oh, I just saw 2 of them in here that are just off the chart. What is this? $1957D. Wow. That one is crazy. Sell it and buy more silver. No, unfortunately, I'm going to have to sell it and buy. Wow. Yeah, I'm going to have to buy videos. Videos are the most important thing right now. Videos for the book. The book, by the way, is just totally kick-ass. Wow. It's just amazing, because nobody's ever had these in their hand before. Now, I do have a few that are very special. I got a couple of 1909 VDBs. I didn't look at these yet, but let me see what these are about. Yeah, by the way, I checked. I've got approximately 1,700 of them. 1956D. Let's see. 1955S. It's a double die obverse, so let's see if this is a double die. If it is, I'm retired. I don't think so. But a 55, if you have a 55 that is a double die, that means they struck the damn thing twice. And if they struck it twice, it means that it is an extremely rare mint mistake, and it's worth several $100,000. Think about that for a second. How's that for wow? Big time. Let's see, what do we got here? Whoa. It's just crazy, because this is literally 57. So this is a 69-year-old penny. And look at it. I mean, it is absolutely perfect. This is as close to perfect as you're ever going to see. Now, the question, of course, is if you have a 1957, what was it? I think 1957 D that is MS 67 or 68 condition. So here's the thing. Each one of these, that's funny. 54S again. Now, here's the crazy part about this. You look at these and you go, okay, so these coins, what in the world? What did I just get? Oh, I just got restricted. I just got a restriction for that. Just to have some in case copper goes up. Well, I mean, copper's okay. It'll go up. You know, it won't go up as much as silver. So just remember that. When in doubt, buy silver. Always. Period. Silver is in a very unique position right now. There are a lot of countries that need silver that won't have it here shortly at all. 1953 S. Wow. Not touching the center at all. A lot of silver. Good. Then get more. Always get more. That's, I mean, number one thing. Get more silver. If you have um if you have 100 ounces, that's great. That is fantastic. If you have 1,000 ounces, will probably allow you to survive for the next 10 years easily. How much should you have? At this point, again, it's going to depend on your situation financially, but if you own a house, and by the way, all of my pennies are for sale. So if you're interested, let me know. When will they outlaw silver? They won't outlaw it. They can't outlaw it. That's impossible. It's in the Constitution. As a matter of fact, let me just read it to you so you understand. Where in the Constitution are gold and silver mentioned as money? Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. Nope, that's not it. That is not it. Section, no, it's. All right, let's see. Section 10, no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. So you're telling me that they can make gold and silver coin a tender in payments of debts? Yeah. Wait, the states can do that? Yeah. You bet your ass they can. Huh. Well, isn't that a crazy one? Here's one for you. Article 1 of the United States Constitution, Section 8, Clause number 5. The Constitution gives power to the Congress to, and I quote, to coin money, regulate the value thereof and of foreign coin, and to provide for the punishment of counterfeiting the securities and current coin of the United States. Okay. Well, now, that's interesting. The Constitution provides that no state shall coin money nor make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, which means simply that the states can't pull the bullshit Ponzi scheme that the Federal Reserve Bank is pulling. No, you can't just make money out of thin air. It has to be gold or silver because that's real money. Oh, so if you're a state, you have to have real money. But if you're the federal government, no, just a note, just write an IOU, because that's what they are. They're IOUs. Oh, well, why do we do it that way? Well, because if you're restrained in how many of these you can print, or more realistically, in how many of these you can print, then all of a sudden you can't just go start wars all over the planet, can you? No, you can only start wars that are extremely important, because you have to have the gold and silver to back up any currency. So if I wanted to just print more out of thin air, nope, not if it's backed by real money. That's why they took us off the gold standard in 1971 completely. Because at that point, we were spending so much money in Vietnam that everybody kind of realized, hey, you know what? It looks like you're kind of full of shit over there, guys. Like, what is going on? France said, hey, you know what? Thanks, Bretton Woods thing is great and all, but and you're holding all of our gold for safety, but we'd like that back. And we said no. And they said, okay, let's reword that. And so Charles de Gaulle sent a battleship over to New York Harbor. They literally pulled a French battleship into New York Harbor and said, we're going to send these troops to go pick up our gold now. Yeah. They were pissed. And at the time, we just didn't want that kind of heat. So we gave them back some of their gold. Now, with Germany, we said, I'm sorry, go fuck yourself. What? Oh, Germany, we've got all of your gold. Yeah, you just go fuck yourself. We'll give it back to you when we're ready. That's where we're at now. We've given them back some of their gold from World War II. Yeah. It's absolutely insane. At this point, if you're not buying survival supplies or silver, you must not plan on living very long. That's the reality. Because the entire world, the globe, is going into a depression. It's not just going to be here. The good news is we're pretty resilient. We should come out of it probably before everybody else does. The bad news is this is actually going to be a depression, nothing like you've ever seen in your life. There will be food lines. There will be people who don't make it for simple reasons, that have curable diseases that can't be fixed, that die outside of hospitals, just like the last time there was a depression. There are 330 million people in this country. There are a good amount of them, a very large amount of those people, maybe 10, 15% of them, that are worthless. Now, when I say worthless, that sounds harsh, but if you have a degree in pottery with a minor in philosophy, and you work at Starbucks, and you absolutely would never consider joining the service because violence is gross, and you've got 4 different names for yourself, he, she, they, whatever, and on top of that, you have no useful skills whatsoever. None. You can make a heck of a latte, which not real tough. But when you look at these people, and world, I'd like honest, intelligent people. But I mean, right now I'll just settle for honest. And if they're intelligent, great. But at least let's get honest in there, you know? And clearly something about that winery that, by the way, has never existed. Well, I can tell you this, Matthew. Um, all of the poorest people in this country are about to find out what it's like to be in a third world country. And the problem with that is in third world countries, a lot of times criminals are very violent. They act very violently. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens because right now we're in a perfect position to literally eat ourselves alive. And what I mean by that is we've got a group of people who spend an enormous amount of time and money lobbying Congress and the Senate for private prisons. It's the fastest growing industry. And those private prisons need to be filled up as soon as they're built. And so these guys are lobbying for as many people to be locked up as possible. And as the violence increases and as crime increases because people are starving and they're stealing, we're going to pack those jails, those prisons. We're going to expand them. And then as we expand them, that gives these companies hundreds of millions of dollars more per year to lobby Congress. So we'll be in a position where we're already the most incarcerated country in the world. Like we put more people in jail in the United States as a percentage of population than any place else in the world. Right? It's just crazy. So it's about to get much, much, much worse. Because before we were incarcerating people because we thought that was the correct thing to do. And we wanted to get black people off the voter rolls. That's the easiest way. Oh, you got a joint, brother? Well, guess what? You can never vote again. It's true. It's just a fact. In a lot of conservative places, you see somebody that is 99% Democrat and you can bust them, give them a record and they can't vote. Do it. That's exactly how they thought. No, the homeless don't live in a third world country. Absolutely not. Because in a third world country, your kids walk through the garbage dump barefoot all day looking for things that they can eat while trying not to step on hypodermic needles. If you're born into Social Security, like if you're on Medicare and Medicaid, if you're on food stamps and you're in Section 8 housing, when you're born in this country, you're in the top 1/10 of 1% of wealth in the world. Because your mom and your dad, even if they're below the poverty line and they're getting assistance, they're still rich compared to most countries. It's just a fact. Look at countries in Africa where the average, or fucking Cuba is a perfect example. You know how much the average person makes in Cuba right now? $500 a year. What? That's crazy. Yeah, well, the suburbs are a beautiful place until the shit hits the fan. And, the cities will empty out when the grid goes down, and it will go down, period. Now, will it go down because of stupidity or because of intention? I don't know. I mean, we can do the numbers here on this channel. We can figure out what exactly it's going to take. Like if we can run the numbers and go, okay, well, if the grid goes down and if 90+% of the people in the United States die over the course of 12 months, then the 6 or 7% that are left, approximately 30 million people that are left spread across the entire country instead of 330 million, then, what does that mean for those people? Do those people now become extraordinarily successful because we still have the same amount of resources without the same amount of people? I hate to say it, but that's what happened after the plague. Sucks, but that's true. After the plague was the Renaissance. Half as many people, actually 70% less people, same amount of cows and wheat, etc. So it's one of those weird things where, is there a reason that the wealthiest, most powerful people among us would want civilization to be destroyed? I don't think so. I know that sounds crazy, but Mark Zuckerberg, hundreds of millions of dollars. But what if there's nobody left to be on Facebook and there's no Facebook? He doesn't want that. What about Microsoft? What about any of these companies? I guarantee you Elon Musk doesn't want this. I mean, how could anybody who has made billions of dollars off of this crazy, corrupt, idiotic system, why would they want the system to fail? It makes no sense. Now, if you're Amish, does it matter? No. Hey, the grid went down. Jebediah didn't tell me. Well, that's because Jebediah lives a couple houses down, but he doesn't have electricity either. Well, I saw Ezekiel this morning. It seems like his carriage is working just fine. Oh, yeah, horse-drawn carriage, that'll probably still work, huh? See? That's the key right there, is if you're Pennsylvania Dutch or you're Amish or you're an indigenous tribe in the middle of BFE, it's not going to matter at all. Well, I'll tell you this. If you're a computer programmer and you happen to live and work in Manhattan and you're making a big, fat, six-figure income, it's a good chance you're never leaving Manhattan. Two ways, right? Two ways in and out of that place. When the power goes off, 18% of the vehicles will die with the grid. Now, it's only 1 out of 5 cars. But if you're on the highway, if you're in the Holland Tunnel, and every 5th car stops running and coasts to a stop, that's gridlock. You're done. You're done. You're not going anywhere. You better get out of your car and start running. And you better hope that you're close enough to your house, or God forbid, your kid's school, your kid's daycare. Because when this happens, are the teachers going to hang around with your kids? No, they're not. They're going to go get their kids and they're going to go home. Are they going to stay there as long as it takes for all of the children to be picked up? No, they're not. Because some of these kids, their parents work 40 miles away in the city. And if they're in the suburbs, that's it. Think about that for a second. Think about the thousands and thousands of people who either can't get their kids, can't get home, or, God forbid, their car still works, and they don't know how to get home because the GPS just disappeared, because there won't be any GPS. Now, if they live near an airport, better watch out for airplanes, Well, that's the thing, is that, the idea of having a bicycle, even one of those dumb-looking fold-up bikes, in the back of your SUV, because every idiot's got an SUV now, even though we don't need them. Everybody's got one. Well, good. Put some stuff back there. Put a backpack back there. Make sure you've got at least a couple liters of water, especially if you're 20 miles from home when you're at work. What about an electric bike? It's up to you if you want to take that chance. Electric bikes are heavy. If that battery doesn't work, you're screwed. Now you really have a problem. So, yeah, do I suggest everybody has one of those bikes? Well, if you don't work from home, yeah, absolutely. You have to be able to get to your kids first. And then from there, you have to be able to get your kids back to your house. Got it. So that's the kind of thing that I cover all that stuff in my book, which, by the way, if you haven't bought my book, the hell are you doing? What are you waiting for? Buy the book. So, and it's right on here, by the way. All you got to do is click on the link and it'll take you straight to it. I used to do the pedicabs, the rickshaws. And the funny part is, I did it when I was making a ton of money. Didn't need to do it. I owned a company. I was making good money. But guy rode by one day when I was at a Christmas parade, and I said, "Hey, man, that's got to be a good workout." And he goes, "Oh, we burn an extra 2,000-3,000 calories a day doing this." He said, "Sometimes we pedal nonstop for 10 hours." And I said, "Okay, you got an extra one of those I can buy?" He goes, "No, but I'll rent you one." And I said, "Okay." He gave me his information. I called him the next day, and he said, "All right, you want to work the New Year's thing at in Tempe at ASU?" And I said, "Sure." I rode that bicycle nonstop for about 13 hours that day. I drank a gallon of Gatorade, about a gallon and a half of water. I made $1,400 in cash, and this was 20 years ago. Made a ton of money in cash, and went home. It was 74 degrees in my house, I remember, because I looked at the thermostat as I was shaking because I was so exhausted. My body couldn't actually control my heat anymore, my body temp. That's why they wrap long distance runners in those Mylar blankets, which, by the way, you should have a couple of. Well, I think I might start throwing those in with coin purchases, because I just realized I've got hundreds of them. I bought an entire case of them, along with a bunch of little can openers. Have I heard of a book called Zeke? No, never have. So I went home. I wrapped myself up in this thing so that the only thing that was poking out was just my face out of this blanket, and I was shivering. I fell asleep. I woke up about 12 and a half hours later with the worst fucking migraine you could imagine from being dehydrated. A gallon of Gatorade, a gallon and a half of water, and I was still dehydrated. So took just a ton of Advil and salt and water and all that stuff. Mylar blankets, you bet. Do I have any here? No, I think they're in storage. Mylar blankets are those silvery looking blankets they look like plastic, and they wrap long distance runners in them and stuff. They're really, really good for keeping warm as well. I used to make backpacks for homeless veterans, and I would always put Mylar blankets in there because, it only gets down sometimes in the wintertime down into the teens here. But, if you're malnourished and skinny and, not all that healthy, and you don't have a Mylar blanket, then yeah, the teens can kill you for sure. You will die of exposure. So I included Mylar blankets and, socks and whatnot. All right, John, have a great night, man. Yeah, space blankets, exactly. That's exactly right, Matthew. They're space blankets. So anyway, all right, guys, I'm going to jump. Again, call me for some silver. The price is actually excellent right now. It has not taken off in spite of what's going on. And what's going on right now is, and everybody agrees on this isn't just me saying this, every economist, even the idiots, agree. We are about to be in a situation where the inflation is going to be horrendous. I mean, really bad. Silver's only up 1% on the day, but all right, we'll take it, 1%. So it's a good time to buy silver for sure. Will it go back to 120? Yeah, it'll go back to 300 eventually, but 150 soon. No, the petrodollar is well, it's basically over with the UAE pulling out of what do you call it? Um, uh, oh yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely sign it for you, Shirley. No question. Um, what's the name of the OPEC? Because they're pulling out of OPEC, it's it's over. OPEC's the only reason we still have a petrodollar. Yeah, and where does it go from here? I don't know, man. We got a lot of enemies. We've been pushing a lot of people around. Well, the thing is about that, we're allowed to set the price of silver and gold at whatever we choose. Right now, the statutory value is $42 an ounce, which is idiotic. It's at almost 5,000. Why? Why? Because they haven't revalued it since 1973. So, okay, well, let's revalue that shit. Well, what does that do? Well, revaluing it, that's an asset that directly cuts into our debt. So right now, if we revalue silver and gold, let's say gold at $50,000 an ounce, well, that would mean that our national debt is cut by probably 70%. That's kind of a big deal. 70% of our national debt's gone. Yeah, because we have an asset to balance all that debt. So, okay, why don't we do that? Well, we might not, but we might. And if we do, then, that's going to be a big deal. Now, would I like to see us go back on the gold standard? Yeah, absolutely. Because the thing is, all these senators that talk about accountability and they wish that, that people would act like big boys and girls in Washington, they won't have any choice. You can't spend more than you have. Well, how much do we have? 261 million ounces. Okay, so how much money is that? X amount. Okay, so at X amount per ounce, it's X amount of money. How much can we spend? X amount. Well, but what if we really wanted something? No. Cut somewhere else, cut your spending somewhere else, and then you can take that money and divert it over here. But you can't spend more than this total amount of money because that's how much gold we have. Oh shit. So we'd have to be accountable. Yeah, we are accountable. It's called a FICO score. It's called getting kicked out of your house. It's called losing your apartment. It's called having your car repossessed. We have to be responsible. These assholes that we send to Washington, they don't have to be responsible because it's not their money. It's your money. And your money ain't real money to them. It's fake. Well, maybe it's time we made it real again. But again, that's going to take a lot of really pissed off people. And right now, there are actually people who still think that the economy really is strong. It's going to be a real reckoning when they have to admit that it is far from strong. But we'll see how long that takes. Some people will never admit it. And some people will just blame it on the Democrats. The Democrats will blame it on the Republicans as soon as they get in power. Everybody points fingers and nobody does shit. So what do? Get out of the game. That's all. Check out. It's easy. Stop playing this game. Look, see this? What is this? $4? Okay, guess what? This $4, 10 years from now, it'll be worth this much. What? Well, I don't want that to happen. How am I supposed to save money? You don't. You can't. That's what inflation is. It's robbing you of your money. They're stealing your money. Okay, but wait, what if I take those and I buy this? Will this only be worth a quarter of one of these? No. It'll probably be worth maybe 50 of these. So I can either go from this to this, or I can go from this to this. Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, wait, but what about the other part? There's no other part. There's no other part. But wait, what about the other thing? It can't be that straightforward. It's that straightforward. Can't be that simple. It's that simple. This right now costs less than $100. 10 years from now, it will cost you $500 or $600. This is going to go up that much? No. These are going to go down that much because they're going to have to print them like fucking crazy now. Why? Because they just spent $1.5 trillion on a budget for whatever. They're asking for $1.5 trillion for the military. And when I heard this, it was so weird because I remember hearing this so clearly. We need to increase the budget substantially to correct for all the years and years that we fell behind. Years and years we fell behind. Everybody increases the defense budget every fucking year. Every year. When was the last time I heard somebody say, holy shit, I heard Bush say that the first year he was president. That was 26 years ago. We need to increase the military budget substantially. We need to have the finest military, and we've suffered through years and years and years of underfunding. And now it's time to rebuild our forces to where they should be, the world's best. Are you fucking kidding me? That is exactly what Bush said. And then we just spent like fucking crazy. Spent like crazy. And Obama came in, and guess what he did? He cut, right? Because he increased it even more. It was almost like he was trying to prove, I may be a Democrat, I may be a liberal, but by God, I spend money on defense. So he increased it and increased it and increased it. Then Trump came in and said, shit, hold my beer, watch this, and really increased it. And then Biden came in and said, hey, since we're going to leave so many billions of dollars sitting on the ground in Afghanistan, let's increase it again. And they increased it again. And now they're saying we need $1.5 trillion to make up for all the years and years that we haven't been properly funding our military. $887 billion last year wasn't properly funding it. That's insane. That's insane. We get to pay for a war we didn't need. We get to pay for a military that we don't need to use. Oh, all 1.5 trillion. That's just for defense. That's not the budget. That's just the defense budget. That's all that is. If you want to see what I know it's hard to believe. Let's see. US federal spending. $7.117 trillion. Imagine a pallet, a big wooden pallet like you see behind the grocery store. Okay? Now imagine that pallet is stacked 3 feet high. The whole thing is completely covered with $100 bills. Crisp new $100 bills. Okay? So this little teeny stack, that little tiny teeny stack right there, that's $2,000. So imagine a $10,000 stack is about like that. Now, imagine those stacks covering every square inch of that pallet 3 feet high. Nice block of hundreds. Now imagine that by the way, that's $1 billion. Now imagine that two of them, one stacked on top of the other. Now imagine that pallet sitting in the corner of a football field, right on the goal line, right at the pylon as you go out of bounds, right there. Now imagine that those two deep pallets go all the way across the goal line to the other side of the field. And then imagine that goes all the way to the far end zone line. 2 pallets deep, covering the entire field. That is $1 trillion. We're going to spend 7 of those this year on federal spending. That's just federal spending. That means that every single taxpayer, if we wanted to pay off our debt, every single taxpayer owes right now $357,000. If all of us, every taxpayer in the country, came up with $357,000, we could pay off our national debt. The day you're born, the moment that you take your first breath, you owe $114,000 in taxes in order to pay off our debt. The interest on our debt alone, the interest that we pay, the people who are holding our bonds, who bought bonds from us so that we could go out and recklessly piss away money on Iraq and Afghanistan and Ukraine and Venezuela, Ecuador. We have boots on the ground in Ecuador. What? Ecuador. Yeah, Ecuador. The interest on our debt right now is over $1 trillion a year. That football field covered 6 feet deep in hundreds, fresh, brand new hundreds. That whole football field, that's just our debt. That's just interest on the debt. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, it really, really makes you wonder. Unfunded debt. This is, by the way, unfunded debt is all the other stuff that we don't talk about. Well, unfortunately, Peggy, I really believe that he could at least get rid of our income taxes, our personal income tax, because up until 100 years ago, we didn't have an income tax. Nobody paid income tax. So, it's just the way it was. And then all of a sudden we had one, and it was temporary, and then it wasn't temporary, and now it's been 100 years. It's certainly not temporary. So could we revert back to the old tariff system? Of course we could. It worked great. It worked fucking awesome for over 100 years. No, not going to happen. Not going to happen, because everybody realizes now this is all just a big Ponzi scheme. And when it ends, it'll be a big blow up. And the government's going to come to our rescue. They're going to rescue all 343 million of us. And at that point, they're going to go to a cryptocurrency. Yep. Yeah, 1.7 billion cash to Iran. Now, here's the funny part. When we're looking at these numbers, all of a sudden it's like 1.7 billion. You can't wipe your ass with that much. Just these numbers are so huge. And by the way, the number I heard initially was $6 billion. And the reason that it was sent to them was because they agreed to do all the nuclear stuff. And so we didn't give them money. We just unfroze their money. They had billions of dollars that were sitting in the United States from all the way back in the 70s. And we said, oh, all right, well, if you follow these guidelines and you do what we tell you to do with the nukes, yeah, we'll unfreeze your money. Hell, we'll send it to you. We'll give you cash. Now, that's not what we did with Russia, though. With Russia, we said we're freezing your assets. And then the banks that had their assets said to the federal government, hey, we can keep this, right? And we said, well, no, you can't keep we're pausing, not giving it back to them, but we're just holding on to it. And the bank said, oh, no, we'll give them back to principal, but we get to keep all the interest, right? Huh. Interesting. You're going to be using the US dollar coin. Who knows? I mean, there's no coin. When you say coin, it's like, it's crypto. So, how does that work? Is it Satoshis or whatever? It'll probably be very much like Bitcoin. Theoretically, it's a stable coin. Yeah, exactly. It's a stable coin. It's backed by the full faith and blah, blah, of the United States government. What a bunch of bullshit. Anyway, that's just, that's what they'll say. But the reality is that along with this new coin will come something that they've never had before. And that is the ability to track every single transaction you make. Every single transaction. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Because once they can do that, then they can tie what you're allowed to do to things like, are you a troublemaker? What's your social credit score? You wanted to go on a vacation. Do you have any idea what the carbon footprint of your last vacation was? Oh, you weren't paying attention? You and your kids and your husband or your wife, you flew on a jet airliner. You realize that those things create hundreds of tons of carbon. You've already exceeded your carbon footprint for the year. So unfortunately, we can't let you buy those cruise tickets because cruise liners are not as bad as flying, but they do leave a carbon footprint. Look, we're only doing this because we want you and your great grandchildren to be safe. I don't like the world I see coming. I don't like it at all. I really don't like it at all. So all I can do, well, there'll be a carbon tax, but for a lot of people, there won't be a carbon tax because the carbon tax will be extravagant and it'll be something that, it's a perfect example is I think it's Jeff Bezos has a house in Beverly Hills. And, I grew up in that area. I used to run around Beverly Hills. They have very, very strict codes about the way your yard and your house can look. You're allowed to do a lot of different things, modern, classic, whatever you want, but it has to be tasteful. And there's a certain limit to how high your hedges can be, like 10 feet, which, 10 foot's pretty good. Nobody's going to look over that on accident. Jeff Bezos has 30-foot hedges all the way around his property, 30 feet tall. So the city of Beverly Hills said, cut them down or we're going to start finding you. And Jeff Bezos said, okay, how much? And they said, well, we'll fine you $10,000 a day if we have to. And he said, okay, that's fair. Well, Deborah, they'll restrict your travel. I mean, unless you're rich. If you just pay the carbon tax and, slide them $20,000 a year for that special business carbon tax, whatever, because you're a business person and you take your kids because you're going to a business thing down there, happens to be right next to Disney World, then that's it. And that's the way it works. You know, the rules are for thee, not for me. That's the way the rich are. And believe me when I tell you, I grew up with them, been around them, dated them. They really, really, in their heart, are taught to believe that they are better than you. They're different and they are superior. It's a scary thing. And if you're just a mook like me, but you're charming enough and you've got a steep enough vocabulary, they might let you in. They might go, okay, kind of a rough around the edges peasant, but he's charming. He's a charming peasant. He can be with us. He can hang out with us. And that shows people that we're willing to tolerate the little people. All right, I'm going to go eat. You guys have a great night. Call me, buy some silver. Seriously, soon before it's illegal. All right. You guys, thanks for hanging in there with me. I will see you tomorrow.